conversation with Hrag Kalebjian, the founder of Henry's House of Coffee, based out of San Francisco, California. This is his first time doing a conversation of this kind and of this length. This is the G Formula Podcast. And now, dear friends, here is Hrag Kalebjian. Formula Podcast. Our guest is Hrag Kalebjian. Hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly. Great.
Yep.
Hrag, thank you. Yes, thank you for joining us today, and I appreciate it. This is the first episode, so this is not scripted. I'm winging this. I'm literally winging this, and I appreciate your time. But my intent with the G Formula podcast is to basically speak to other business builders, diverse industries, and get their insight so that the future generation can benefit from it. Because there's not a lot of people talking about their successes, failures, and I'm hoping with this session we can add value and add knowledge to the universal mind so that people can tap into it and benefit from it. So with that said, let's get right into it and start with the origin story. Henry's House of Coffee, I believe it was founded in 1980, if I'm not mistaken.
It was actually founded in 1980 by my father's uncle.
Gotcha. So if you want to take us through that journey and what inspired you to enter the business as well, that'll be a great starting point. And then we can evolve into the next topics.
Sure. Yeah, so the business was started, as I mentioned, by my father's uncle in 19... His name was Hrag Kalebjian. He was an Armenian from Romania, emigrated to the United States, and opened up a supermarket. You'd call it like a specialty goods store nowadays. And he would sell premium European goods like cheeses and meats, crackers, candies. But he also sold coffee, and he roasted the coffee on site in a small 1 kilo roaster, which was very unique at that time. Because if you were to go back to 19, there's no Starbucks, there's no Peet's, there's no concept of a coffee shop. When people wanted coffee, they would go to a supermarket and they would buy it in a can. If you remember kind of the old Folgers cans.
Right.
And so his concept was, I have a store that's high-end premium, and I'm roasting the coffee. So it was very unique. And I purchased it from him in 1980.
Gotcha. And this is in the Bay Area, right? San Francisco proper.
Yeah, San Francisco proper. The area is called the Sunset District. It was opened on a street called Irving Street in 19. And he's done really well. But the story is that in 19, the landlord didn't renew his lease because he wanted to bring in a bank, and so he had to find a new place. And he was so disenchanted by the concept of getting kicked out that he found a new spot where he purchased the building, and that was also in the Sunset District, about 10 blocks away in the area of the Sunset District. So he owned the building, and he was a lot more comfortable doing whatever he wanted to do. And if you've ever been to San Francisco and you've been to the yeah. So the Sunset District in the 60s and 70s was, you had a retail location on the bottom, and then you had a residential area at the top. So the coffee place called House of Coffee was the name. It was downstairs, and then the residential area was upstairs where he lived. It was like a 3-bedroom apartment. And yeah, so he did that for about, 19 years or something like that, and he was looking to sell the business. Then comes my father. My father was born in Lebanon, moved here in the 70s from the war, and he was actually working as a mechanical draftsman. So what that meant was there was a company he worked for that did a lot of HVAC technical drawings. There was no computers back then, so everything was done by pencil and rulers, and my father did that for a few years, and he got laid off. And when he got laid off, as any typical Armenian, wanted to own his own business. My father's father, my grandfather, had a bakery in Lebanon. And at the bakery, one of the things that my grandfather would do to kind of draw attention was to serve coffee with a big good. And this is in the 50s. And in the 19th, there's no Costco to go buy bulk coffee. So you would actually have to buy raw coffee and roast it yourself. So my grandfather would roast the beans kind of like in a pan almost, like a wok. And so that's kind of how he would roast the coffee, brew it, Arabic coffee, Armenian coffee to the customers. And so my dad grew up in that. And when he was 12, my grandfather pulled him out of school to help with the business. And my dad's job was roasting the coffee. So at the age of 12, 13, every day he'd come in and roast the coffee. So he knew what coffee was and how to roast per se. So when he got laid off, he wanted to find his own business. And, back then, there's no like loop.net or websites to find businesses. The community was the church. And through the church, he had heard that one of the members, Antanis, was looking to sell his business. And so my father walked into the business, met Antanis, and noticed that there was a coffee roasting machine there and immediately got drawn to it and ended up purchasing the business from him in 1980. In 1980, I was in kindergarten. I was 6, 7 years old. And so, growing up, that's all I knew was that dad owned a business called House of Coffee. And when I was 12, 13, similar to my dad would drag me out of bed on Saturdays so that I could help him with the business. And I hated it because I wanted to watch cartoons, but my dad had other desires. And so my upbringing, my thoughts of the business were not the best. I never thought of taking over the business as I was growing up in high school and in college. And so for that reason, I majored in economics at UC Davis. And when I graduated, I went into corporate finance. And I did that for about 10 years. Yeah. And,
Okay.
all the while, dad's doing the business. He's working hard. He had 4 stores in the mid-90s, 4 coffee shops. And,
So he
you
did
hear
grow.
about the
He did grow
struggles
from
and
the
challenges.
from the original one. You guys, your father grew it to 4 locations.
Yeah, in 19, I think we're up to 4 locations.
Amazing.
And yeah, it was great. And it's hard when you don't have a formal education, having to manage 4 stores. It's challenging, and I would hear that
Absolutely.
from my mom and dad of all the challenges. So when I was in corporate finance, I was working on my career, and in my last stint, I was managing a team called Insights and Analytics at AAA, which is auto insurance, home insurance company. And the goal of our team was to tell stories about the numbers. So what that meant was we would interact with the sales agents, we would look at the data, and then we would tell the executive team what was going on so that we could make proper decisions. And it was a really good role. I loved the company. I got a lot of experience learning from chief operating officer on how businesses work.
So like
And
average order
throughout those 3
values,
years,
customer lifetime values, and
yeah,
life
it would
cycles, stuff like this.
yeah,
Gotcha.
and life cycles, exactly. Forecasting, implementing new ideas, concepts, selling more to the same people, or how to sell to more people. The salespeople telling their side of the story, the numbers don't add up, trying to figure out,
Right.
what's really going on, that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
where the data is all makes sense.
Yeah, and in those meetings, there was a lot of best practices that these executives would focus on. And I would always think of my dad, like, oh, I should tell my dad that's a good idea. Or, oh, I wonder if my dad does that. As I kept thinking about that, I kept thinking more and more about my dad's business. And what really kind of tipped the edge for me was I worked for a great man named Jeff Hawkins, who was the chief operating officer, and he was pushing the company really hard to grow. And when you're growing a company really hard, especially a company that's established like AAA for 100 years, there's a lot of cultural change that affects the employees. And I think looking back, it didn't go too well. And unfortunately, Jeff Hawkins was let go. And so I have my yearly review with somebody that has never managed me before. And I was working extremely hard that last year. I had just had a child, my 3rd child. He was 8 months old. So, managing family and working long hours
Balancing that.
took a toll on me. But it's dedication, it's craft, and I wanted to be the best manager that I could be. So the review comes up, and it's somebody that I've never met with, never worked with before, and they gave me an average review. And I was really upset, and I wanted to quit. And I thought to myself and talked to my wife about, this is unfortunately the downside of corporate life is sometimes you are just a number, and sometimes there's politics.
The corporate culture.
And yeah. And I needed to make a decision to be comfortable with this or to make a change. And I think at that point I realized I want to be able to have a say in whatever I do. And if that's the case, then it's probably not going to happen in the corporate world, and I'm going to have to do something on my own. And that's when I decided, I think I have a fantastic opportunity to work with my dad and take this business to the next level. And so on July 1st, 2000, I quit, and that was my first day on the job, joining my dad and the business. And so I've been here 10 years. I just celebrated 10 years.
And the rest is history. That's definitely, especially
exactly.
when you have family, corporate life, the corporate culture, and someone that I've worked for corporations as well. My best move was to move away from that. And I've never looked back. So I have empathy of same thing. I have 2 boys, and so you pivot from corporate culture. Your biggest challenges as you approached your father and had the discussion.
Yeah. To be honest, the biggest challenge was my father when I first started. And that might sound upsetting to some folks. It's not a negative thing. But what I realized within the first 3 months was the biggest challenge was going to be my father. And the story that I tell is when I first joined, I knew that I can't make any changes because I need to understand the business first. And when I say understand the business, I need to be an expert at everything, from cleaning the toilets to making lattes to understanding the coffee industry, ringing up customers, right? I need to do every single part of the business so then I can step back and see where I want to focus on. And so I did that for about 3 months. And when I was working
So
there, I would
you just
notice
dived in. Yeah.
every once in a while, yeah, hey, and I think that's the best way to do it. And I would notice every once in a while we'd run out of milk at the store and my dad would have to leave and go to Safeway to get more milk. And I thought that was weird because we're a coffee shop and we make lattes and cappuccinos and milk is a big part of what we serve. We should have enough milk where we shouldn't have to run to the store every once in a while to get it. And as I was digging in, I noticed, my dad had one person that was in charge of ordering milk. And if they were sick or if they were busy and they forgot, then the order would come in and we would be short of milk. And that's what would trigger my dad to go to the store. So I thought, okay, cool. I can use this as an opportunity. Really small thing. Let me create a form that calculates how much milk we need to order. So I sat down with my mom and dad one day, told them about my plan and showed them the form and said, look, every week we need 70 cases of 240 cases of whole milk and so on. And they can enter what we currently have, subtract the two, and that's how much we need to order. And as I'm telling this story, my dad's, off to the side, he's listening. And my mom, being the typical Armenian mom, is saying, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. What a wonderful idea. This is going to be great. And so I finished telling the story and my plan, and my dad is pretty quiet. And so I turned to him, I'm like, Dad, what do you think? Mom's been talking the whole time. And so he turned to me and he said, I feel like everything's being taken from me. Which at first is a really weird thing to say. And I was upset, to be honest. I was like, what are you talking about? And then I thought to myself, if my dad is thinking that a simple milk order form feels like everything's being taken away from him, then I think I need to take a step back and really understand what are the things that will make my father feel like he's still the man at this business. And I'm only here to help him feel confident and grow. And something as stupid as a milk order form can have such a tough feeling for my father might seem simple for me, but for somebody who's been doing the same thing for 40 years can feel different.
It's their baby, right?
From that point on, I made it a mission to think about how my changes will affect my father, not just the employees, but my father specifically, and to let him know that these changes are not intended to make him feel like he's losing everything, but to make him feel more comfortable and have more control over how things are being done at the shop.
It's the continuous process of improvement.
And that was a really good start. What I was going to say was, in my mind, this was like a low-level thing, and I had so many other plans to create process improvement because my strategy when I joined the business was, if you're going to grow a business, you have to make sure that A, you have the right people, B, you have the right people doing the right things. And so the foundation for me was there's going to be a lot of change. And the reason for the change is to grow the business, and we need to do it in the right way. So you need to be on board. And I needed to make sure that my dad was on board and he felt comfortable because it trickles down to the employees. So to be honest, it took us a couple of years to figure that out between me and my father until we really got a good sense of whose roles are what parts I'm working on, and making sure that he's on board with those things.
Absolutely. What was the next, transition? Because I know you didn't have an online presence, right? And as we sort of go into the next topic, that it would be like transitioning online and then marketing strategy that comes with that. How did you pivot from like a local physical brick and mortar to also going online and doing that part of the...
One of the things that I learned in the corporate life is there's two ways to sell. You can either sell more stuff to the same people, or you can sell to more people. And as I was working in the shop, I thought to myself, I want to sell to more people. And there's two ways to do that. You can either open up more stores, or you can use a different channel, which in my case was e-commerce. And in 2000, I found myself buying a lot more stuff online. was, I think, a good change where there was a lot of SaaS businesses popping up and, Web 2.0, all that kind of stuff. I found my wife were buying a lot of stuff on Amazon. We're buying a lot of stuff on random websites, and we had a website, but it wasn't what it needed to be. And I thought to myself,
was this the website that had like that brown sort of static website you originally had prior to going to? I think you went to WordPress, right? WooCommerce.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And, in 2000, WooCommerce, Shopify were probably picking up steam, but the website was a custom website, all custom code stuff and credit card transactions, all that stuff was super clunky. And so I decided I think, mid that the website was going to be my growth, because opening up more stores has its own challenges. There's capital, a lot of money you got to put in for brick and mortar. There's more staff, which is its
makes
own
sense.
issue. And so I focused on opening up a new creating new websites. So in 20, we launched our website on WooCommerce, like you mentioned. I think it cost us $20 to create it, and you can imagine that conversation I'm having with my dad to invest $20,000 building a website.
And in 2013, right?
Yeah. That's a lot of money, but
it is.
My thing was, I see a lot of opportunity there, and I'm going to turn that 20 into like dollars. You need to plan. And so we launched in 20 using WooCommerce. We had coffee subscriptions, product photography was awesome, all that good stuff. And we were doing about 20 orders a month in 2000.
By the way, that's how I stumbled upon. Right. And that's how I think at the end of 2000 or the early stages of 2000 is when I saw the first remarketing, retargeting ads on Instagram. And immediately it captured my attention because I believe there was the Armenian coffee aspect of it and the artisan. And I see your ads, just kind of a side note. And immediately I placed an order. I think I placed an order of like a sampler where it came with like 3 different and loved it. So I remember that.
And you know what's funny, Arthur, is I remember your order. And the reason why I remember it is because it's my baby and I would check it every single day. When you're doing 20 orders a month,
right,
you're getting 1 order a day, if that. Right. So when an order would come in, it was a huge thing for me because I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting a sale. I actually remember your order because I think your email address was like Web Cities or something that had some type of like an advertising or e-marketing domain name. And I remember thinking, oh wow, this guy he does like SEO stuff. Like how cool. Yeah. Like I wonder if he saw our ads or something.
Yeah.
I also remember that because again, it's my baby and it was so exciting to see an Armenian from somewhere else buying coffee.
Interesting. So you basically had the 20 orders and then you started seeing that compounding effect throughout the years, months, year over year, month over month growth with running ads and...
Yeah, we did. Yep. And I think that was the most difficult part the first year. So the way that I describe it is I had just purchased this very expensive Ferrari. It's sitting in my garage and I'm sitting in the Ferrari. I can smell the leather. All the buttons are there, but I can't drive it because I don't have any gas in it. It's like, damn it, I just wasted all this money and I can't drive this car. That's what I felt like with my website because I just spent $20. It's a really nice website, but I'm not getting any sales. There's like nobody coming to my website. How do I get the word out? How do I tell people? And that's when I really realized like spending $20 was probably like 30% of what I needed to do to grow this business. Like you have to spend a lot of money on acquiring new customers. How do you start? Where do you go from here?
Right, especially with all the noise that's out there and all the sort of there are a lot of people that mislead you into thinking that they can do something for you, but at the end of the day they don't come through. So it's very challenging. So what was your marketing strategy then?
Yeah, so I was going to say, in addition to what you mentioned about the noise and all that, is that coffee is ubiquitous. And there are thousands and thousands of coffee roasters selling online. So how do you compete? And so one of the things that I always talk about to other small businesses is you have to know what differentiates you from somebody else, and you have to be able to tell that story in 30 seconds or less. If you don't have that story, if you don't have that mission statement down, then everything else that you do is going to feel like it doesn't sync up and it doesn't match. And so step 1, which is extremely hard and challenging, is before you build a website, before you take product photography, you do all your marketing, before you do any of that stuff, what is your story? What sets you apart? And
the brand story.
All the fonts, all the colors, all the photography, all the website, all that will be driven from that 30-second differentiator. And so for me we're a 3rd-generation coffee roaster in San Francisco that focuses on a smooth, dark roast. Yeah, the first thing that we did was set up a email marketing service. And the reason why I did the email first was it takes so much time, effort, and money to acquire a new customer. And what people don't realize is you want to have that customer come and buy from you again because it's a lot cheaper than it is to acquire a new customer. Everybody wants to add more customers, and that's fair. But it's more cost effective and efficient to have that customer come back to you. And that's why I set up email marketing first, because what I wanted was as soon as that order is placed, now we can start emailing them and telling them about our story, about new products, sending them tips and tricks to retain them and get that customer lifetime value to start. So the first thing we did was set up email marketing. We used MailChimp at the time. We set up custom automations and welcome series, browse abandonment, pop-ups, all that stuff was kind of the first thing that we did. And then right after that, we set everything up. That's when I felt more comfortable to start really focusing on acquiring new customers through social media and Google keywords. So step 2 in 2000 was to start creating Facebook and Instagram ads and tell our story. And the key there was telling our story. I never sell the product. My focus has never been the coffee because I'm very confident in my product. My focus is always telling the story. That's kind of what's going to get that cold audience to click or to watch, the video. What is that story for that customer to feel like they're buying from a real person and not just like some spam, drop shipping coffee company? I want them to feel like this is an actual family run business that takes care of them and roasts delicious coffee. But you have to tell that story first in order for them to feel comfortable. So we started to create a bunch of video ads and photo ads about my relationship with my father, our heritage, our background being Armenian, that kind of stuff really started to resonate.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people miss that part, the story part. And it basically is a big part of, especially when you're in what they call a red ocean market, when it's saturated, you have to somehow differentiate yourself. And so I think that's an amazing approach. I mean, this is tried and true. And that's an amazing strategy there. It's one of the reasons why I ordered when I saw so.
Yeah. And I think one of the best performing ads was actually me telling the story about the milk order form. It sounds awkward and weird, but what I realized was small business has a lot of meaning to it. And one of the meanings of small business is challenges of running a small business. In addition to that, family-run small businesses. And I wanted, in order for a customer to feel like we are a credible company and that we are different, I thought it would be an honest thing to discuss how running a small family-run business has its challenges. And so we created a video called the Milk Order Form video and put that on Facebook and Instagram. And the intent wasn't to talk about how sad it is. The intent was to show that if you're a family and you love each other, you can get through any challenge, and being honest that, you're not always going to agree, but the love of family keeps you going. And that's what creates small businesses to succeed. And so we created that video ad, and you'd be surprised, how many people just reacted to how credible and loving that was. And so that was kind of a really good video, especially for cold audiences that had never heard of us, to talk about, what's going on kind of in the background and how we are able to get through those challenges. And you're not talking about coffee at all. You're just talking about the small business family aspect. And
the trials, the tribulations, the successes, the failures. Yeah, absolutely. And it resonates with people. And I much rather do a business and buy my coffee or, services and other products from businesses such as yourself than some large corporation that's run by a ghost and that has no soul. And that's.
Yeah, absolutely. It's titled The Challenges of Running a Small Business. And it's not something that I'm shy of. It's something that I'm proud of, to show that how you can successfully get through these challenging times. If anything, it's like a good video for other small business, family-run businesses to kind of figure out how to work with each other.
Absolutely. It's about creation evolution, and that's what you did, and you haven't stopped. And so one of the videos that I found very interesting is the comparison between the dark roast and the light roast, and the common misconception of like the light roast being less caffeinated and lighter than the dark roast. And the way you explained it, that when the dark roast actually weighs less and has less caffeine, that was sort of like a light bulb for me. So I believe if content like this, emotionally connects you with the brand, and I'd love to see more of that. So you had the ads running and it was very impactful. What were sort of the next steps as you saw the growth and with a lot of the new technology stack that's coming into play, like AI. I know you've already
Yeah,
upgraded from WooCommerce to Shopify, and Shopify has its own set of
yeah,
features. And what do you
yeah,
see there that's really working well for you in the role of online and offline?
yeah. You know, I, we were with WooCommerce for about 5, 6 years, and anytime I wanted to add like a new app or a new service to the website, it always seemed like these apps worked better with Shopify. They integrated more seamlessly. The way that I describe it is Shopify is like the Apple platform where everything just works. You can't customize too much of it, but you know that it's going to work 100%. And WooCommerce is like an Android where everything under the sun is customizable. But what that means is when you install an app, you have to spend a lot of time and money making sure it works the way you want it. And so
Right.
we switched to Shopify 3 years ago. One of the things that Shopify has that is just industry is their conversion. Their checkout process is second to none. And we saw that immediately.
The
We
one-page
had like a
checkout.
4% conversion rate and we jumped up. Yeah, one page checkout.
Yeah, that's
Um,
amazing.
and then they also have, their Shopify Shop Pay, where you don't have to put in your credit card stuff. That just is
So it's an
insane. So
easy one-click
we went from
checkout.
4% conversion to 6 immediately.
Wow, that's a huge increase. When
Yeah,
you look at
and
you look at a
yeah,
2%.
it's huge. And then
I was just talking about the two. For most people, when they look at a 2% increase within the industry standard, if what the industry standard is for conversion rates, that's a huge number. That's a huge jump. Benchmark conversion rates.
yeah, pretty big. And then the other thing that we did was we switched from Mailchimp to Klaviyo. Again, Klaviyo and Shopify. I mean, Shopify is an investor in Klaviyo, so it makes sense that they integrate well. But it just has so many more features than Mailchimp did. So those two right off the bat were fantastic. And then the third piece was a stronger emphasis on coffee subscriptions, which we use a company called Recharge for subscriptions. And those three, Shopify, Klaviyo, and Recharge, have really been a big boost to our business in terms of sales, retention, you name it, is just ridiculous. And
Absolutely. No, I
as
have experience with
those
all
were
of them.
kind of yeah. And so then I started to think about ways to make the ordering process even easier because with Amazon now, we're talking, it's probably like 2008 now. With Amazon, it's just such a simple way to add to cart, pay, it just made it a beast. I wanted to kind of really kind of fine tune the website and make things simple. And so another thing we did was we created an app. So you can download an app on your Android or iPhone and use the app to place an order instead of going to our website. So that's been very successful, a lot more seamless. And then you can also send notifications to the customers for special deals like that. That's been really well
Push notifications.
done.
That's like
And then
instant.
with the advent, and then with the advent of text message marketing, which we started in 2000, but Klaviyo, we've been using Klaviyo now with SMS and with their automation flows. You can send a text,
It's amazing.
email. That's been another good kind of get customers.
Yeah,
And
I've
then one
seen
of the things we're
big
working on
big
now.
conversion. I think there's like a little overlap because of the low data connection, but I've seen a large percentage of lifts with Klaviyo and abandoned cart emails, etc. So
Yeah. And then one of the things we're working on this year, again, to make it even easier to purchase, again, my strategy being, okay, I've got a lot of customers. How can I make it even easier for them to place an order if they don't want to subscribe to a monthly coffee? Is this other feature called text to order, where you send a text to a number with the name of the coffee. So for example, you would text the word French roast and then you would get a text message back asking you how many bags you want. You text the quantity, then you get another text asking you what type of grind you want. You enter the grind type and your order is placed.
done.
And in 15 seconds with a text, you're done. You've got your order. So we're working on that. We hope to launch that here at the end of the month. So I'll just be curious to see how many customers will like that feature. Since everybody's texting a lot, I think it makes sense to kind of pivot a little bit towards that and see how we do there.
No, absolutely, because that's like your coffee assistant, right? Hey, I need 3 bags of this type of roast, and boom, it's done. That's definitely going to be a game changer.
Yep.
That's definitely. Are you running any paid ads on Google, or in the beginning stages, did you do any sort of paid search campaigns where, and other channels like display, YouTube, paid campaigns?
Yeah, in the beginning in 2000, and we started off actually with Google keyword search, but it was just extremely challenging because, like I mentioned, you're competing against thousands of roasters. And so for those keywords that we wanted, like dark roast coffee, specialty dark roast, it was extremely expensive. we're spending about $1,000 a month, where Starbucks is probably spending $50,000. So it's really hard
Easy.
for you to kind of win those keywords. And it was costing us about for an acquisition. So about $100 for one new customer, which is extremely expensive. You want to be in the low 20s. And so we stopped doing that and focused more on Facebook and Instagram. But moving forward about 5 years after that, we were doing really well on Facebook and Instagram, but then Apple released that update, the iOS update, I think 3-4 years ago.
With the privacy
and so we started to see some of our acquisitions. Yeah, the privacy thing where the app does not track you button. And so what we saw was, our acquisition costs going up. And so at that time, Google had created a new advertising platform. I forget the name of what this platform is called, but essentially it allows you to post videos and ads on the overall Google ecosystem. So it's YouTube,
the Performance
search,
Max campaigns.
Anything else there you go. Yeah, Performance Max. Yeah. And we've actually seen our cost per acquisition for cold audiences perform much better on Google Performance Max than Facebook and Instagram. So now our strategy has been to split up our ad spend, where we put about 50% in the Google Performance Max for cold audiences, and then the other 50% on Facebook and Instagram for the more warm, hot audience.
Amazing. Yeah, because Performance Max, I mean, it's in the beginning stages, so they are continuously improving that machine learning. I've had access to it for a while, and before it was released to the public because of our Google partnership with them, and I've seen the progress. I mean, it's still not exactly there, but with all ChatGPT was announced and they came out public, Google took note of that. I mean, they raised the alarm. They pretty much panicked, I would say. And so now they're really aggressively improving that machine learning. And so I think that's going to benefit everyone in terms of the performance AI-driven ad campaigns that they offer. Because before you would launch it in the beginning stages, I remember I would launch it for different industries. For example, home services, spending $10,000 within, like, let's say LA County within one day, right? And it would, because we would track everything. Yeah. We would track the entire journey, including the IP and where it would come from. And a lot of it came from click farms. A lot of the clicks came from click farms. And so, they wouldn't give you any access for you to block them. Now, slowly they have this feature where you could reach out to them and they'll custom block certain things because they see that people stopped using it. But that's amazing. So you currently have an active Performance Max campaign going.
Yeah, I do. I have a company that manages all my advertising, and so we meet once a month, and we've been on Performance Max for about a year, and what we've seen is that for the colder audiences, we tend to have a better acquisition cost than on Facebook and Instagram.
Oh, nice. That's very good to hear. As far as search engine optimization, I know it's a topic where you have the local part of it and then you have the e-commerce, which is a little bit different process than the local sort of the Google My Business, right? Like coffee shops near me, because that's a different process of optimization. Yeah. And then the e-commerce is a different, because you're targeting the money keywords, but also the long tail keywords where somebody's going to be typing in more than 5 words to describe what they're looking for. And are you engaged in that process? And if so, are you seeing, like, what are you seeing? Are you seeing any jumps in rankings, and how is that impacting your overall business month over month, year over year, sort of the compounding effect?
That's a good question. The way that I look at SEO is like a marathon that doesn't end, because with SEO, it's constant tweaks and updates to the product description, the meta description, the keywords, the synonyms, and that sort of stuff. And what I've actually been doing is it's funny you mentioned that, because this year I'm kind of re-looking at my SEO for each one of my products. And here's been my process so far. Number one, I use an app called Yoast SEO, Yoast.
Yep.
Have you heard of them?
Yeah, of course. We use them as well.
And yeah. So Yoast has a Shopify plugin or an app, and with them, it kind of tells you based on your SEO analysis and readability, it gives you kind of like a red, yellow, or green score.
Signals,
and it gives you all these things. And so what I've been doing is I've been using Yoast SEO in conjunction with ChatGPT to create my product description. And so an example would be I open up ChatGPT and I tell ChatGPT to behave like they're an SEO expert. And then I tell ChatGPT, here's the key phrase that I want to use for French roast. and I say, I want you to write a product description, but here are the requirements. And those lists of requirements come from Yoast SEO. So an example is make sure that the key phrase is included at least 4 times. Make sure that 30% of my paragraph use transition words. Whatever Yoast SEO
Right.
recommends, I
Make
put
sure
that
you
as a
use active
requirement.
voice.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And so then I tell ChatGPT, write it for me. And then I copy and paste it into my product description. And 8 out of 10 times, I'll get a green smiley face. So it's really saved me a lot of time on having to write it, whereas before I was having to do it manually. So ChatGPT has been a game changer from that perspective. And
Absolutely.
I just literally 2 hours ago, I was going through my tea products. We sell about 9 different teas. I was going through each one of them, having ChatGPT write it for me so that I can get happy green faces on SEO. So it's something that I do look at probably once every 6 months because the engine needs to work on it and think about it and all that stuff. But
Right.
it's a never-ending thing when it comes to SEO.
Yeah, for us, our process is that before we do both, right? So we do the e-commerce SEO, but prior to just doing SEO, is we launch a paid campaign. We'll launch a paid search campaign, and we'll have targets that are exact match, phrase match, and then broad match for discovery. What we do is what that is that when we launch the campaign, we also have all the trackers in place to basically track from the beginning, cross device conversions, the entire journey. And when we advanced conversion tracking as well, we're able to see the dollar amount that the conversion generated, so that the algorithm and the AI can work together. But once we get enough data and we see the keywords and we see which ones converted, right? We take that and we implement that as those keywords as part of the SEO program. And then from there, we'll implement those keywords and we'll start the content creation and the product, if it's e-commerce, for the product inner pages, all the details. And with Yoast, I believe they just rolled out, or not just, but like about 8 months ago, they rolled out the AI with the premium one. So I think it uses ChatGPT API for you to automatically just click on let AI create it. And you probably will get 90% accurate or generated response that will take you into the green light or the green zone with that. But that's our process.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's been a game changer because a lot of people go off of different tools that are like historically telling you like this is a search volume for this keyword or key phrase, and this is what we think these are the keywords we think has the intent. But a lot of often they make the wrong decision. They optimize for something that's more broad, more for someone that's learning about dark roast versus somebody with the intent of purchasing. And then if you don't have that paid data, it's almost like working in the dark from what I've seen in my previous. So that's our process. And I'm glad that you're using ChatGPT. By the way, I don't know if you've used this feature, but if you export your keyword search phrases, right, in an Excel spreadsheet, and you upload it to ChatGPT with all the different variables within that report, and you tell it to look for certain trends and intent and the highest converting keywords, devices, locations, it will give you a summary within minutes after analyzing that data that is more powerful than any data studio or any kind of chart program that you would plug in information and look at it from an example. So ChatGPT is a game changer, definitely. And I'm glad that you're using it, and I promote it. I tell everybody that's the SEO part that you're doing. Are you on Shopify Plus or are you on Shopify regular?
I was on Shopify Plus, but I switched back down to the regular because the biggest advantage with Shopify Plus is the ability to make some changes to the checkout process. But it's expensive. It's $2 a month, and I just can't justify the sales.
Yeah,
just based on the fact that I can tweak the shopping cart. Yeah, so I'm on the regular one, and it's fine. I haven't had any issues. Sales have not gone up. I'm staying with the regular.
Yeah, that's my biggest complaint with Shopify, that they do that. And on top of that, I think they also charge like a 5% on your gross sales, I believe, with Shopify Plus, which is like they become a partner with like a 5% stakeholder. So okay, awesome. Sort of going a step back, I just wanted to also touch on this because I saw a lot of businesses play the short game and go after the short wins during the pandemic. Those, in my experience, and I'll tell you what it was, but what was your response during the pandemic? Did you stop advertising or did you go all in? Because a lot of people, in my experience, they stopped. Those that went in, I'll give you some of the stories once you're done, but
so everything was shut down here in San Francisco on March 13th of 2000. And I remember that date because that's the day my oldest son was born. So it was a very drastic thing. And what I noticed the next day, March 14th, when I came in the morning to process our online orders, it was almost double what we would typically do on that type of the day. I reached out to my advertising agency and I was telling him, I'm like, hey, like, I think we should cut back on the ad spend. You know, I'm panicking. My cafe is shut down. I'm losing a lot of money. And he said something that I will never forget. He said, hey, look, I totally understand if you financially can't afford it, but if a lot of people are thinking like you, especially when with online advertising could potentially be really cheap right now. You should think about not cutting any ad
Absolutely.
spend. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so it hit me because I thought to myself, well, if my store is down, I need to figure out another way. And I do have an online business. I've been doing it for a while. Fuck it. Pardon my French. Let's go. And I
Yeah.
told him, I'm like, all right, don't cut it. Let's increase the ad spend by like
You went all
30%.
in. That's amazing.
So
That is amazing.
yeah. And actually, it saved my business. Like we did more in sales during COVID as an overall business than we did in 2000. Our online business in 2000, we were doing about 5 orders a month. 2001, we were doing about 3 orders a month.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and so
That's,
it was
yeah.
some big.
I'm glad that you're sharing
And
that story.
and what's cool now is
Sure, sure.
yeah, and now with COVID gone and things kind of quote unquote back to normal, we're at about 1,000 orders a month. So we're still double what we were doing prior to 2009. So COVID almost like took us to the next level, and we continue to stay there. So it's been a great thing for me. Like COVID, from a business perspective, for my online business was great.
Yeah. And I'll add to that story. Most people wanted that, they played the short game of like, hey, we're going to just save money now because of the uncertainty. And I'll give you an example of my client in the event industry, right? They're a banquet hall in Los Angeles, California. They were faced with the same thing, and I don't blame them. Anybody with this, the uncertainty of what was at the scale it was happening would feel, right? But I already knew what was
Mm-hmm.
happening. Most people pulled out. Most of the banquet halls stopped advertising. Even because I know everybody in the industry as far as like within the events planning. And the event venues. And when I spoke to my client and he said, what do you think we should do? And I said, you go all in. I don't see any of your advertisers spend, they've stopped. Your cost per click went from the average cost per click
Yeah.
from $15 and some cents to $2, about one, I remember. Can you believe the drop? Yeah. And so what happened is it's an event, so people booking events like birthdays and weddings and stuff like this. And he said, well, we can't do any events because the city doesn't allow us. Of course, right? But I said, don't worry about that
Mm-hmm.
because people, they know they can't do events. They'll book 2 years ahead of time. And they surely did
Yep.
exactly that. And right now, they're one of the top 3 banquet halls in LA and Orange County. I mean, I'm talking about competing with hotels and just standalone banquet halls. Yeah, with, raving reviews. And so that was the best decision that they've made. And the people that did want that short, didn't go in all in, really suffered because they didn't see that compounding effect at a
Yeah.
significantly lower cost per acquisition where like it was unheard of. And then right after, you saw what happened right after with the cost per click. It went triple, quadruple. It's like 10x
Yeah.
more now.
That's right.
So it's like revenge advertising.
Yep.
Everybody came back like, we're gonna make up for it.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That's awesome.
Moving along to the sort of sustainability and ethics, and I saw some of your videos. I think you're in South America, and it's this most beautiful place. Like it's like I don't know, it's like lush green. And I'm looking at the coffee beans,
Yeah.
and it's if you could tell me a little bit about that, of how you basically source your coffee.
Yeah.
That would be
In
great.
I think it was 20 or 20, I forget. I went to Panama to go visit a couple farms, and I'd never been to a farm, so as part of the kind of learning process, I wanted to go and understand what it took to grow coffee. So we went to a farm called Quinta Hartman in Panama and stayed there for about 5 days. Picked coffee cherries from the trees, just like the workers. Took it to the processing facility, watched them take the seeds out of the cherry and dry, just kind of understand the entire process for me to get a sense of what quality coffee looks like. But because we've been in the industry for so long, my father has a really good relationship with a local importer here in Oakland, California. And so I think some coffee roasters, as a way to differentiate themselves, have talked about how they have a one-on-one relationship with farmers. But that's not what we do. We basically just purchase directly from the importer because we've been with them for over 40 years, and our relationship is with importers. They know exactly what kind of coffee we're looking for, the quality, The samples that they send us, are usually pretty darn good. And so I have been to farms. I have done a kind of direct to farm coffee before, but from a logistics finance perspective, for me, it's a little bit easier to work with importer because for me, relationships are more important. And for me to have that long established relationship with an importer, make sure that the quality is consistent and I don't have to worry about trying something that might not be what my customers are looking for.
Yeah, that would logistically, you would have to fly out there and do quality QA every time. And if you have trust and relationship, then as long as the
Yeah.
quality of the coffee is amazing, I think that's the most important part. And so I know we talked about future plans. If you want to touch on that a bit with the SMS and the AI assistant, but what are there any plans of expanding like the brick and mortar into LA maybe?
Love to. People ask me that all the time. I've always shied away from brick and mortar because the cost of doing business in California is just really not only
Yeah.
from the lease perspective, the regulations, and then the employee wages. I don't know if you've heard of the news.
Yeah.
Pay bump for the
Yeah.
franchise. It's just California, unfortunately, is not a very business centric place. And
I
so
align
for
with
me to
that. I
grow,
align with
I've
that.
always thought it's been more cost effective for me to grow online. And so this year, like I mentioned, we're going to do this kind of text to buy, probably introduce a couple new products, and just really focus on getting that social media stuff
In
growing
place.
quality customers, not the one-off. It's a marathon. It's a slow and steady race. It's not going to make me a millionaire overnight, but what it does give me is a consistent revenue stream and quality customers. And for me, that's all I need. I don't need to be a millionaire. I'm happy, I'm comfortable financially, but I just want to make sure that the coffee that I'm producing is quality. The customers that are purchasing my coffee have a long lifetime value. As long as I continue to grow slowly, then I'm good.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's amazing. And I align with that. So I guess, which brings us to the final sort of topic or advice for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people that are aspiring to be within the same industry or other industries. Being an entrepreneur is a lonely place, right? And it's especially, I mean,
Yeah.
there's levels to it, and different levels, different devils, right? And so what kind of advice, the advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs if they're just starting out or thinking
Yeah,
about starting out?
that's a really good question.
No,
That's a
no,
great
no. Yeah.
question. And I think if we're talking about entrepreneurs in the e-commerce space, I think that's probably where I have the most experience. What I would say is the first thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to save up some money before you even jump in. And you might have a fantastic idea and you think that's a great product and all that. And I understand that, but it is a business and you have to have some money set aside in order to launch. What that means is you have to have money to build a website. You have to have money to constantly advertise, right? So you have to have that chunk of cash sitting there so that when you do launch and when you do build your brand, you have that money because it takes so much time and effort to build that out that not having the money, you're going to go back. You're not going to go forward. That's number one. Number two, I mentioned this before, which is having that 30-second elevator pitch of why you're different. So before you get into design, before you
The
get into
story.
colors and fonts and feel, you really have to work on what that story is and be able to tell it in 30 seconds or less. And the reason why 30 seconds or less is important is because everybody's attention span is now 8 seconds, unfortunately, with TikTok. So
Right.
30 seconds is 4 times the attention span. So
That
you have to be able to use at least 30 seconds, right? And then everything else
Right.
will be driven
Right.
off of that. And the third thing is
Great.
most businesses
Did
are
we get
not
cut off?
successful in the first 3 years. Can you hear me, Arthur? Arthur, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, cut off a bit. Okay, I went low data mode just in case.
That's okay.
So we got number 2.
Yeah.
And uh-huh.
Yeah, number two. Number three, I was saying how most businesses fail within the first 3 years. And when you're thinking about, being an entrepreneur, it's the long game that you have to be thinking about. And you shouldn't be in it to make fast money in the first year. If you have my advice is to set, when you're first starting off, is to set a goal every 3 months so that you don't feel like 3 years is too hard to achieve. And so breaking that up into 3-month goals allows you to kind of really hyper focus on certain specific things, make sure that you've reached those, and then add to that. So every 3 months, having some type of a goal that you want to achieve. And then when you look back, you can see how successful you've been at having all of those goals met. And pretty sure, hopefully, you'll look back and be like, wow, it's been 5 years, and you'll be able to celebrate your hard work.
Absolutely, I align with that. Yeah, if you're gonna be chasing it, you're gonna be doing it just for the money. You're not gonna last. And so if you're gonna do this, you better
Yep.
be in it for the long game.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so,
Well, awesome, Arthur. Thank you. This has been fantastic, brother.
yeah,
Appreciate your time.
Hrag, thank you for being on the G Formula podcast. I appreciate your time. You just gave the free game. I'll put all the information in the description so people can, find the website and the social media links. And if they have any questions, how do they reach you? Just through email, social media?
Yeah, email, social media. Our email address is on our website, info@henryshouseofcoffee.com, or you can DM us on Instagram or Facebook. Happy to help.
Awesome. Again, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You too, brother. Godspeed.
Yes, thank you.